Hello and welcome to the Strong, Healthy, Happy podcast. Today's episode is number 93, and I'm going to be giving you a little life update. I haven't recorded a podcast, a personal podcast, for quite a while. I've talked about my past, I've talked about my dieting history, my background, and shared, lots of different experiences with myself in previous episodes, but I haven't done one for ages. And I was actually here, it's a Sunday afternoon. I've got the office door open. I hope that my neighbours don't come out, like the kids next door come out screaming into the garden, and you might actually be able to hear the birds chirping. But I thought I would do a little bit of a life update. And rather than talking about my past, I'm actually going to talk about where I'm at, where I am right now in my own personal goals and how I'm feeling, because I think it's really important to be very transparent. I pride myself on leading by example, and leading by example doesn't mean portraying this perfect, that I've got all my shit together and that everything I do is 100% perfect all of the time. Because I can absolutely reassure you that it is far from perfect. I don't have my shit together all the time. I am human, just like you. I have had in the past similar struggles to you. And although I've come a very, very long way from where I was previously, and I know a lot more, and I'm obviously much better educated, and I keep on top of my education, and I know exactly what I need to do and how I coach my clients. But, I'm also human. And as a human being, sometimes we kind of drift a little bit from where it is that we want to be and how we want to feel within ourselves and our body. And, it happens to us all. And I find myself at this point right now. Now, the point I find myself at is like nothing terrible has happened. I haven't gained a huge amount of weight or anything drastic happened to me and my goals. But having been in maintenance, which is when you find, you lose a bit of weight, you find a place that you're happy at and that you want to live at, and that you aim to maintain and live in a body that you feel reasonably happy in all year round. Now, maintenance doesn't mean staying at the same weight, regardless of what other diet clubs may have you believe. It's not about aiming for a goal weight. It's about living within a range. And your body is going to change for many reasons. It could be seasonal. It could be just specific times of the year when there's more celebrations, Christmas, different times of the year. Obviously, winter, we're all sort of hibernating and comforting. And, sometimes in the summer, things get a lot easier. So your body can change with your life, depending what's going on in your life, how your life is looking, any external pressures or stresses that can have an effect on you and how you do things in your day-to-day life can change your body, as well as the seasons and just life in general. And, that's perfectly normal. Being at maintenance means that sometimes you might live in the lower end of your range, sometimes more in the mid area of your range, and sometimes it might mean living in the upper end of your range. And I felt more recently in myself that I have been a little bit at the upper end, more at the upper end of my range. And whilst it's still, a comfortable level for me to be in, I'm just at this point where actually summer is approaching, and I would rather get more into the mid range of my maintenance range, or even the lower end of my maintenance range, because I want to look and feel good in my clothes. Obviously, we all wear a lot less clothes in the summer, and it's how I feel that kind of dictates my actions. And it is the ethos of my coaching. If you've been listening to my podcast for a long time, or you're a regular listener, you will know I always talk about feeling good. And if you feel good, everything else kind of slots into place. And feeling good is a great kind of measure to have on how you're feeling about all things within your life, not just about how you feel within yourself, your body, your energy, your mood, and how you show up for yourself every day. But I've just decided that I'm at this point where I just want to lose a little bit of body fat so that I can get into this more comfortable maintenance range that I prefer to live in, especially as summer is approaching. It doesn't mean that I'm going to make this transformation, an 8-week transformation, and have a summer body. It's my body. I'm just going to tighten up my habits and my behaviors, which have drifted over time. And this is perfectly normal. And it's something that happens to clients, especially when they've achieved a great amount of weight loss. They kind of, have achieved a lot. And so sometimes that feeling of success leads to habits and behaviors drifting because they've lost a big chunk of the weight that they wanted to lose, and so kind of relax a little bit. And this is perfectly normal. Sometimes when someone has been trying to lose weight for a while, a duration of time, and you can get quite fatigued from dieting. And let's not forget that dieting does cause a stress on the body because you are effectively giving your body less food that it actually requires. And just to explain this a little bit further, to lose weight, you want to be in a calorie deficit. And being in a calorie deficit means that you're eating less than your body expends over a day, over a week. Your body doesn't reset at midnight. So we kind of, for my clients, I take it over a week. We work on averages over the week. But generally, it is about eating a little bit less than what you're expending. And the deficit doesn't have to be big, because the bigger the deficit, the harder it is to stick to. Whereas if you have a smaller deficit, it enables you to live your life, have a little bit more flexibility, enjoy meals out, do the things you enjoy, eat the foods you enjoy, and still lose weight. And it might be at a slightly slower rate, but actually you might make more progress that way because you can actually stick to it, as opposed to going in really hard, sticking to it for 2 days, and then going completely off the rails because hunger creeps up, bites you in the bum, and you're diving into the biscuit tin and grabbing the nearest snack available and possible within your house because you're so hungry. And then you end up overall eating more calories than if you'd have just taken a slower approach with a smaller deficit, and that's one that you can stick to. So it's something to bear in mind if you are currently listening to this and you're also looking to lose weight. Is, it's not about how few calories you can eat. It's about having the calorie target that you can stick to consistently, not perfectly, consistently. And I'll come on to that in a minute. I want to just talk a little bit more about habits and behaviors, because we're like, what does habits and behaviors drifting mean? It's something I use a lot within my coaching. And if you're listening to this, you are thinking, what the hell is she talking about? So let's talk about what habits and behaviors drifting looks like. So let's give an example. I'm going to use nutrition. I'm going to use everything, right? Let's just say you are really consistent, your eyes on the ball, and you're exercising 3 to 4 times a week. You're really regular. You're doing everything that's kind of needed. And then one week you miss a session and you only get there twice, let's say. And then the next week you think, I did 2 last week. Oh, maybe I'll just do 2 this week. 2 then becomes 1. And then before you know it, your 3 times a week has now become once a week, if you're lucky. That is you drifting from your exercise routine. It kind of happens gradually over time. And you forget about it. You don't really recognize the necessity of going because everything's fine until it isn't. And until you feel not so healthy, not so strong, weight has crept up a little bit, and then it starts to matter. And this is when it's really important to get back to doing your regular exercise routine, not aiming for 6, 7 times a week or 5 times a week, just getting back to your realistic 3 times a week that you can sustain over the week, every week. It's doable, it's achievable. When it comes to nutrition, habits and behaviors, this is something that's really common. And again, something I'm guilty of, where you're preparing dinner, you might be chopping veg, and, there's no big deal in picking up veg, it's vegetables, but it can transfer onto picking other things because you've got a habit of picking up food whilst you're preparing food. Or you open the fridge, you see a punnet of grapes, and every time you open the fridge, you're taking a handful out. Again, fruit is good for you, but it's still picking up food. It's a habit that has drifted. It's not enjoyable to eat grapes every time you open the fridge. It's really nice to eat grapes really mindfully and really enjoy the flavour, or whatever it is you're picking at. Might be picking food off your kid's plate. They haven't quite finished everything. So rather than throw it in the bin, you start eating the leftovers because it's wasteful. And then actually you wonder why your weight is creeping up. It's because if you pick the food off your kid's plate every day, you're going to be over consuming over a week, 2 weeks, a month, etc. Another example of habit drifting is, especially over the winter and when the evenings have been dark, perhaps you haven't been as active in your daily movement. And daily movement is you moving about. So instead of being sat at your desk for 8 hours of a day, making sure you get up regularly, making sure you go for an intentional walk every single day, because it's bloody beneficial for your health. It reduces your stress. It increases your well-being. It helps regulate your emotions. And it's movement, and it is contributing to your expenditure. And if you think you have 12 hours in a day, even if you go and exercise is what, 30 minutes to an hour of your day, maybe a little bit more. What are you doing for the other 10, 11 hours? This is where the majority of your expenditure is made. So if you've shortened your walks or missing your walks and your steps are really low, that is a habit, a behavior and a habit that has drifted. So it's about bringing your awareness and your attention back and thinking, right, I need to get the steps up. They are so low from where I normally am. And it's making that awareness. And this is bringing your attention back. Now, for me, my expenditure targets, which encompasses my exercise, my training, that's not an issue for me. I love training. I never miss a workout. I have built the routine of going to exercise over years. And I do want to caveat and say that it doesn't mean I'm highly motivated, because I can assure you 95% of the time, I don't feel like working out, but I do it anyway because it's in my diary. It's what I'm scheduled to do, and I just follow the plan. So it's really important to highlight that. But exercise isn't an issue for me, and my steps and my daily movement is not an issue for me. And even since I no longer have a dog, which is incredibly sad, but I haven't let that impact me going out for a walk. In fact, it makes me feel closer to my beloved furry baby when I had him, because it reminds me of him, and it's been my therapy and supporting my well-being and emotional regulation, and just makes me feel better. And I have not let my steps lower. In fact, my steps have probably increased since not having a dog, who was getting quite slow. But yeah, that's another matter, and another conversation for another time. But so that's not where my habits and behaviors have drifted. My training intensity has gone up, and I train very hard. And along with that often comes increased hunger, because you're expending more calories and exerting yourself. And where my habits and behaviors have drifted, and maybe this can resonate with you, is through my nutrition. Now, my nutrition is pretty good. I know what I eat a really healthy whole food diet the majority of the time. I still include a bit of what I fancy, because like life would be miserable without it, and I enjoy a little bit of chocolate. But generally, my nutrition habits, although the quality of my food intake is good, my habits and behaviors have drifted. Now, how have they drifted? They've drifted where I'm maybe picking a little bit, snacking maybe a little bit more than I usually snack. Protein intake hasn't been as high. I have a high protein intake, because I train very hard. I am also in my 50s and recovery gets a lot harder. And I want to maintain the muscle I have because it supports my health and gives me the body composition that I want. And so I have a very high protein target and it's just slipped a little bit. And what happens when protein slips is you end up getting your calories from other foods that might be higher in calorie, not so nutritious, a little bit too much of the foods that I fancy. And so the 80-20 split kind of offsets a little bit. And you do that every day. And over time, before you know it, like I am at the upper end of where I like to sit. Like I say, things aren't terrible, but they're relative to every individual. And I also really want to show that I am human just like you. And how many times have I heard clients or people I speak to say, I know what to do, I just don't do it. And I want to highlight that I know what to do. I'm a qualified nutritionist. I know what to do. I've been coaching and working in the health and fitness industry since I was 18. I'm 55. I really know what to do. But sometimes it doesn't mean that we always do it, and habits and behaviours drift. It doesn't mean we've gone off track, fallen off the wagon, because there is no track and there is no wagon. This is your life. Sometimes you are more adherent, sometimes less so. Sometimes your goals may not be your priority at that moment of your life. Your values, your goals, your priorities may change order, and sometimes things aren't quite at the top like they used to be. And so this affects, our habits and behaviors because our priorities change. And as a result, the body composition that you have. So what am I going to do to bring myself back into the more mid-range of where I like to sit? First of all, I am not going to be doing anything drastic. I am not going into a big deficit because I need to fuel my training. I also want to be able to recover from my training, and having a bodybuilding background and having super low calories for the 4 years that I did competitive bodybuilding, I know how to extreme diet and I never want to go back there. It's not a pleasant experience, and that's like an extreme end of the spectrum. But I want to have a little bit of flexibility. My deficit only needs to be small. I'm not in a rush. I'm not in a hurry. I don't have to do it by a certain time. And although it's nice to have an idea of a time frame, what I don't want to do is put myself into a big deficit and then feel unhappy. And if my husband says, do you want to go for lunch? And I'm like, oh God, what can I, it gets a bit stressful. I want to be able to say, yes, let's go for lunch and know that I can make it work. And you can absolutely lose weight and eat out. And in fact, that was the podcast I had intended to record today. But then as I was writing what I was going to include in that podcast, I thought, you know what? Let me do a life update first, and then I will do that podcast. So that will come next. That will be next week. But okay, back on track. What am I doing? So I have gone back to tracking my calories, right? This is just in the last week. Have gone back to tracking my calories. I haven't tracked calories properly for a couple of years. Sometimes I use it as a reference tool because it is a very helpful tool. But I haven't tracked calories for years. Now, tracking isn't right for everyone, and not all my clients track. I've had clients successfully lose weight without tracking. But for me, I find tracking very helpful, as it does my clients that track, and it gives me greater control over the amount of calories that I'm consuming from foods and drinks. And it means that I can manage my calories and I can plan my day ahead, and I can make sure that I can include the foods I enjoy, hit my protein target every day, and stay within my calorie range target. It's not necessarily a definitive number. There is a calorie target, but like I said earlier, I'm not aiming for perfection. I don't expect my clients to hit their calorie target bang on the nose every single day. Sometimes it might be a little bit under, sometimes it might be a little bit over. But overall, as an average, it's around that calorie range. So that's what I'm doing. I'm tracking my calories. Tracking is not a lifetime solution. I wouldn't want you to be 70 years old still tracking your calories. It's about using this. It's a bit like a sat nav. When you don't know where you're going, it's bloody helpful to have a sat nav to get you to your destination. And that's the way I like to look at tracking. It's a really bloody useful tool to get you to your destination of where it is that you're aiming for. And then it can be phased out. And as you go into a maintenance phase, then it's not so necessary to track all the time. I am going to make sure that I hit my daily protein target. It is a non-negotiable. It's always been a non-negotiable, but it kind of drifted when I wasn't tracking. And with all the knowledge I have in the world and the experience, sometimes you just take your eye off the ball and lose track of where it is and how much protein is in different foods and the quantity of that food you might need to hit the protein target that I need. And so tracking will help me ensure that I hit my protein target. And like I said, as a woman in her 50s, going through menopause, I want to support recovery and muscle maintenance as much as I possibly can. And protein will do that. Now, I already eat a diet very high in veg and fruit. Like every meal of mine has a shit ton of veg in it. And I make big fruit platters because my family love fruit and they will always eat more of it when it's cut up. No one wants to take an apple out of the fridge and bite into it. They like everything when it's cut up. And then I can be more adventurous with fruit like pineapples, melons, and I chop the whole lot up, put it on a platter, put the leftovers in Tupperware boxes, and then everyone's got it for the week and everyone's eating fruit, which is, obviously very beneficial. My kids are very aware of their health, they're older, and they like to eat these foods. So I already eat a lot of veg and fruit, but I noticed that my whole grains has lowered. And so I'm going to try and get more whole grains in my diet from foods such as rice and bread. So I love white bread and there's nothing wrong with white bread and I will continue eating white bread. But every so often, I'm going to be including more whole grains and whole grain bread. I'm also going to just keep an eye on the quantity of fruit. Now, like, if you don't currently eat a lot of fruit and you're first entering weight loss, you're not going to gain weight from eating fruit. But when you're someone like me who doesn't have, or my clients who have already lost a lot of weight, or you don't have much to lose, sometimes you've got to really, it's a bit like money. You've got to draw the purse strings in and take greater control of your finances. It's the same with calories. And so although my nutrition is pretty good, at the end of the day, if I've gained weight, I'm over consuming. And so managing the quantity of certain foods, like I eat a lot of fruit, especially those higher calorie fruits, they can add up to hundreds each day. So it's just keeping an eye on that. So I will be tracking my fruit, not so much my veg, unless it's like root veg or the higher calorie veg. I will not be aiming to hit my calorie target bang on the nose every day. And I am not aiming to be perfect in any of my targets for anything, whether it's nutrition, exercise steps, etc. I am not aiming for perfection. I don't want to have really super good days and I don't want to have really super bad days. I want to have average days all of the time because that is going to get me more progress than having really good super days and some really shit horrific days where I go way over my calories. Overall, if I do sometimes really good and sometimes not, and sometimes really super over, it's the net intake is going to be more than if I aim for being average most of my days. That's what I'm aiming for. I'm going to maintain my exercise routine and I'm going to maintain my steps. I aim for 15,000 steps a day, which is really not difficult for me. It's pretty standard for me to hit that target. If I don't hit 15,000, I'm not going to go in a panic because steps are done as an average over the week. Some days might be higher, some days might be lower, but I will be looking at a 15,000 step average over the week. Now, something that you probably don't consider when it comes to weight loss, fat loss, is your sleep. And it's hugely important because I am going to be prioritizing my sleep and a bedtime routine. Now, these are things I have. I have a bedtime routine, but I've been watching too many episodes of maths, which kills my brain, by the way, and it's taken me past my bedtime. And I am going to pull that in because going to bed past my bedtime is not a good thing for these reasons. And these are reasons why you need to prioritize your sleep. Poor sleep, or even just one night of not getting enough sleep, can affect your energy levels. And if you feel low energy, you're not going to want to feel like doing any of the stuff that you need to do to support your goal. Your mood is going to be low as well because your energy is low. You're not going to be feeling good. And having low energy and low mood can often send a signal to your brain that drives you to increase your energy. And the way that your body increases your energy is by eating more food. And this is not conducive to a weight loss goal. And tiredness can skewer your or poor sleep can skewer your hunger signals. And leptin, which signals fullness, and ghrelin, which signals hunger, can become skewed. So you tend to want to have a drive to eat more, and you also feel less full when you do eat. So you continue eating. And this is not conducive to a fat loss goal. So supporting good quality sleep is really, really important. Now, if you struggle with good quality sleep, or like me, you're going through menopause or you're perimenopausal and sleep is something that's really affecting you, you need to really think about setting that bedtime routine if you don't have one. What time do you go to bed? Do you go to bed at all different times, all different nights? And how varied are those times? Because I set a bedtime and I give myself a 30-minute warning, sorry, so that I can get ready for bed. Because most women, and if you're like me, we don't just get up off the sofa and go to bed. We put a wash on, we hang out the laundry, we tidy up the kitchen. It takes us bloody half an hour to get up the stairs sometimes. So I give myself a 30-minute warning. Now, if you use an Apple phone, you have this amazing function in your health app that has a sleep routine in there that does all this for you. I don't do this myself. Apple does it for me. So go and look at it and see how it works. And I am going to stop watching maths and all the other shit TV, and I am going to get myself up to bed with 30 minutes, not to tidy up, but to wind down. I do read, but I've been reading later into the night because my bedtime had got later. Now I'm pulling my bedtime back to my normal bedtime. I'm going to give myself 30 minutes prior to bed to wind down by reading my book, getting into bed, getting into a relaxed state. And then when it's my bedtime, I will stop reading, turn off my light and go to bed. I will not be scrolling on my phone, and that has crept back in, and I'm going to cut that right back out. A few times when I don't need my alarm, I charge my phone downstairs and I don't even take it into the bedroom. But when I need my alarm, I will take it into the bedroom. But I have to be really strict with myself. And if I go to grab that phone, I have to call myself out and tell myself to put it down. You scrolling on social media before you go to bed is really triggering you. You may not realize it. What if you see something or someone post something that makes you feel a little bit agitated, or why wasn't I invited, or that person really gets on my nerves, or whatever it might be? That is not a good way to go to bed. And you checking your emails and looking and doing what you're doing tomorrow is really getting your brain active as opposed to winding down. Now, something I do sometimes before bed when I feel like my brain is overloaded is I do a brain dump. I get a pad and pen, or I use my phone notes outside of the 30 minutes, and I will write down everything that I need to remember to do the following day. And then it's out my head, phone's plugged in on charge, and I no longer look at it. 30 minutes wind down, I read my book, I go to bed. Sometimes I will listen to a guided meditation. It's on timer. It turns itself off. don't need to go back to my phone. Your bedtime may be a bit later on the weekend, but it needs to be like within an hour of your normal bedtime. It will help get your circadian rhythm into a really nice routine, and you will better regulate hunger, you will sleep better, and you will be able to do what is needed to get you the goal that you want. You'll have more energy, you'll feel better regulated. So your sleep is really important. One of the other things that I've let slip, I still do it, but just not often enough, and that is journaling. Now, journaling is where it's a bit like adult diary writing, and it enables you to get more clarity and perspective over your day, over things, maybe certain situations that you feel perhaps I could have handled myself better at. It can also be to celebrate what you did really well and list the things that you did really well in a day. Because these are like your stepping stones that are taking you closer to how you want to feel and the goal that you have. And I'm going to be journaling 3 times a week. It's been about once a week, but I'm going to go back to journaling 3 times a week. And there are journal prompts I can use. Sometimes I just write about whatever I want to write. And, if I look at things that didn't go well, I always write a clear step by step. What would I do differently with the benefit of hindsight? And if I'm faced with these similar circumstances again, and it enables you to gain perspective and give you the tools to handle yourself better next time so that you don't set yourself back from the goal that you have. And also celebrate those wins, like I say, because they're extremely important. But outside of that, I'm not doing anything drastic. My day-to-day life looks the same. I'm just paying more attention to my habits and behaviors that had drifted. Like I say, I'm tracking, I'm hitting my targets, not perfectly. I'm aiming to be average most days because that is how you get consistent and that is how you make more progress. I'm maintaining my exercise, I'm maintaining my steps. Like I say, they hadn't really lowered, but if for your steps have lowered and your exercise routine's gone out the window, this is your wake-up call to raise your awareness, set your intention. Don't overpromise, because if you don't deliver, you're going to feel disappointed. So please do set yourself realistic expectations. If you're listening to this and you're thinking, God, I need help with the implementation of all these things, and I need the support of a coach, I am here, and I'm a very empathetic and compassionate coach helping women just like you. And you feel the guidance and support of a coach would keep you more accountable to the intentions and help you adhere over a period of time, I'm here. If you're interested in coaching, all you need to do is click the link in the show notes that takes you to an inquiry form, and I will personally reply and we'll set up a phone call, have a chat, no obligation. It's important to me that we are a good fit. You want to fit with me and I want to fit with you. It's not just about selling to you my coaching services. I'm very selective over who I coach because we need to be right for each other. If you've enjoyed listening to my little life update, or you have any questions, or you're currently struggling and you just want to reach out, have a bit of reassurance, perhaps there's a resource that I can send you that I have that can help you further, please just message me and reach out to me. All my details are in the show notes. I'm on all the social media platforms. My email is also in the show notes. Please do feel that you can reach out, even if you don't want coaching. I want to help as many women as possible. And that being said, you sharing my podcast with your friends will help me help more women and bring my podcast to their attention. And if you could follow or subscribe to this podcast, it also helps bring the attention of my podcast to other women and listeners. And a review is always appreciated. So please do leave me a review and any feedback. And if there's anything I can help you with, please reach out. And I will do a little bit of an update as well. Not yet, got to give myself some time. But I will also give you a little bit of an update. And if there's anything I can help you with, just let me know. Thank you for listening. Have a great rest of your day.